Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Playing with Power podcast, or should I say, welcome back to the Playing with Power podcast. It's been quite a long time. We're glad that you are here watching and listening. This is the podcast where we talk about all things CEDH, EDH, and Magic the Gathering. I am your host, Ryan, but we have a really big and special announcement on this podcast. We have a brand new co-host and a brand new member of Playing with Power. His name is Jay, also known as Def Cat. Jay, how you doing today?
I am so ecstatic. It feels like being on the other side of the fence that a dog's been looking at his whole life. I've been watching Playing with Power for a numerous amount of years. I had a stint recording games for a while for Playing with Power, which is fun. So I've gotten to be on the channel, and it's beyond me to be here now. I am overly excited.
We are so happy to have you. We have been working with Jay a lot behind the scenes recently, and we just absolutely love everything that he's been doing, not only with us behind the scenes, but the other stuff that he has been doing for the community and CEDH as a whole. And we thought, what better way to help not only increase our reach, but help increase the community's growth by having Jay on the channel today and having Jay on the team.
Yeah, I am just, again, so excited. I feel like still a fanboy. This hasn't set in at all. And the biggest thing about getting on to Playing with Power for me was being so excited to do more for the community, specifically the CEDH community. I run a company called Def Cat Productions, and we do all the editing and production and behind the scenes work for many of your favorite YouTubers, including Mauledhound and Nitpicking Nerds and many more. And for Playing with Power, I always saw it as the community center for CEDH. It was the place I got to tell anyone that was new to go watch, that they got to go to the Discord and instantly interact with all these incredible members, all of which are so amazing in their own right. Like individually, they have huge tournament wins or art or something amazing they do for the community. And I was feeling like at some point in this journey, I could build myself up enough to be valuable enough to be a Playing with Power member. And I was just hoping, and that message to you when I was sending out, I was like, okay, here's all these things I'm doing. I really hope it's enough. And I don't think it'll ever feel enough for what Playing with Power has accomplished as a channel. And obviously many other channels are now too, seeing them grow.
Yeah, it's been really, really great to see what this community has done over the last half decade or more. And us over here at Play with Power, we feel like we are collecting the moxen, for lack of a better word. All these really great members get to be part of the team and be part of this, even if it's not forever, even if it's temporary or just for a certain period of time. So we always feel very, very excited and very privileged to have people like yourself be a part of the team. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, and I'm not only am I joining at the most incredible time, like the last year has been absolutely tumultuous to say the least for CEDH.
Yes.
And
yes,
we've really thinned the herd. We've looked at people that are into CEDH, and now, if you're around and you're still here, you really love this format.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, because it definitely tested a lot of people's metal, for lack of a better word, to see the shakeups that have been happening over the past year. I think that was a really interesting way to put it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. But that is not the only reason why we are here today. The reason that we are here is probably the reason why you clicked on the title or clicked on the thumbnail or whatever it might be. And that was the recent announcement of the commanders, the latest commander updates. Basically, there was some really big updates that happened. There was not only some unbannings, but some also updates in regards to the recently created bracket system and game changers, or more specifically, the game changers.
Yeah. They've blessed us with quite a lot of information, not only a lot of information, but a lot of answers to questions we probably would have had if they had not gone into such amazing detail. So there's a lot to dig into. So if you looked at this unbanning and had some unanswered questions, you are very likely to find some during this podcast.
Yes. And also to piggyback off of that there is a really good chance that if you are still looking for answers, give the articles another read. There was 2 articles released, and we're going to go over them in a little bit more detail here in a second, but they I mean, I think there's nearly 10,000 words on the across
Yes.
those two articles. So they
Yeah.
really kind of left no stone unturned. Not to mention there was also a complimentary Twitch stream and a nearly an hour long video on Good Morning Magic, the YouTube channel. We'll leave links to both of those in the show notes below. But there really wasn't many stones unturned with this recent announcement, and we're going to dig into that a little bit more detail later.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's need more candor. Let's talk about these 5 cards. We've got Gifts Ungiven is the first one we're going to be touching. Would we like to go one at a time, Ryan?
No, let's do them all at first. Let's tell everyone exactly what came off the list. And it's a very important note to make is that nothing was banned, as they had alluded to beforehand. They only unbanned, and they unbanned 5 cards. So what are those 5 cards?
We've got Gifts Ungiven, Sway of the Stars, Braids Cabal Minion, Coalition Victory, and Panoptic Mirror.
Yep. So now, if you didn't read this article and you just like saw a Reddit post or a Twitter post or whatever that might be, any social media that you might be perusing, and just saw article for a ban announcement or, commander announcement and just these 5 cards, you might have very mixed emotions about what these 5 cards. They might feel like a dud to you. They might feel like they didn't do enough, or maybe they unbanned the wrong things. But once again, just really want to harp back on this article. This article really goes into detail as to why they did what they did. So we're going to dig into each one of these in more detail. But first, I kind of want to give some context into each of these cards. So we're just going to read through each of them really quickly here. Do you want to go ahead and take us away on that?
Yeah. And of course, we're starting off with the absolute falling star Gifts Ungiven. Many of you may even know this card's history as a game changer for many formats. Gifts Ungiven is 3 colors and a blue. It is an instant, blue instant. Search your library for up to 4 cards with different names and reveal them. Target opponent chooses 2 of those cards, put the chosen cards into your graveyard and the rest into your hand, then shuffle.
Yep. The second card that is being unbanned is Sway of the Stars. It is 8 and 2 blue. That's right. It is 10 for a sorcery. And it says each player shuffles his or her hand, graveyard, and permanents he or she owns into his or her library, then draws 7 cards. Each player's life total becomes 7. Very interesting card.
And that definitely changes the game. So
yeah, that's for sure.
Next, a very exciting one for many players that have played with this at some point, Braids Cabal Minion. She is 2 colorless, black, legendary creature, human minion, which comes into play a lot. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, the player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land.
Very unassuming at first blush, yeah, but
absolutely.
The next one is a very interesting one, and the one that you always hear the most about whenever you hear rumblings about bans and unbans, no matter what community you're in, and that is Coalition Victory. It is 3 and Wooburg. That is white, blue, black, red, and green for a sorcery. It says you win the game if you control a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color. So it is basically resolve this card. If all the conditions are met, you just win the game on the spot.
Yes, and with fantastic art.
Agreed. Yeah, it's definitely some older school art,
yes.
Back in the days of Dominaria and whatnot. But I've always been a fan.
And the last one that I think probably was the least prospected to come off of this list was Panoptic Mirror. It is 5 colorless. It's an artifact. It has imprint, like Icecrown Scepter. It's imprint X. When you tap, you may remove an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost X in your hand from the game. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may copy an imprinted instant or sorcery card and play the copy without paying its mana cost. So it is played, it is cast, and it is definitely a very easy combo starter.
Sure. We'll get into that. So at first glance, just taking a look at these 5 cards without us digging into each individual one just yet, what's your overall opinion and feel about the announcement with these 5 unbans? Let's leave game changers and stuff like that to the side for a second.
Absolutely. Instantly so excited to see Gifts Ungiven. My Wooburg Fun casual decks won't be sad about getting a Coalition Victory. Sway of the Stars immediately hit me with a wave of I don't want to play against this. This is unfun. And then I almost completely forgot what else was unbanned after that because I went straight to Panoptic Mirror and had flashbacks to high school where my friends would imprint an extra turn spell and we weren't smart enough at the time to really know what to do. It was just interesting that they had gotten that spell. And with Braids, I was never a Braids player. I'd never played against it. This is new to my world. And so it was something that I'm very interested to see if players are going to be able to do unique, fun things with when I play against it. So overall, the only thing I got out of it was the excitement of Gifts Ungiven. Very happy to have that card in CDH. And I felt like Panoptic Mirror was throwing a bit of a hot dog in a pit of dogs. Like someone's going to get hurt. Like it's fun and they're going to taste some hot dog. They're going to be really happy, but someone's going to get bit.
That analogy is, I'm going to put that on a t-shirt somewhere. That's an amazing analogy.
Somewhere in the South, that's been said.
Okay. Yeah, here tonight. Yeah, apparently. Yeah. So my thoughts on this is that you can tell that how much thought went into these 5 cards, because each one of these represents a member of the greater Commander community. And you can see it in basically each one of those. It was so meticulous. And if you really dig into it, you can see how each one of these kind of touches each part of the community. And these 5 cards are more than just 5 cards that you can now play with. They are a signpost, in my opinion, of a Commander format panel and a company that's running this format, the biggest format, in a way that says, we're here, we're going to run this properly, and we are listening. We are listening to this community. And you can see that, and we'll dig into each one of these in a little bit, but like, that's really what I gathered the moment I saw each one of these cards. I'm like, oh, yeah, CDH players like that. Oh, lore players and flavor players will love that. Oh, Timmy/Johnny players will love that. And it just kept going and going and going. It's like, and I was like, wow, they're just hitting every single one of the members of the community.
It's been increasingly clear, and like you said, as we read through this, it's even more clear how much this wasn't viewed through one lens. This was a genuine committee that looked through that. And I think a lot of us, especially during the big triple ban, obviously quad ban, but we're not too sad about Nadu, we looked at that and went, this felt one-sided. This felt like this
targeted.
Was one person had a strong attitude and others followed. This doesn't even come close to that. This committee genuinely, like they said, built on the foundation of diversity. Oh yeah, that's very clear. You had a lot of perspectives and a lot of backgrounds looking at this. I completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's dig into each one of these cards in more detail. Let's start with Sway of the Stars. How do you feel about Sway of the Stars coming off the ban list? You initially said somebody, this might seem unfun, right?
Yeah. The reasoning behind it was the fact that I saw a lot of players when Karn came out and was resetting the game, or any other new tech came famous because someone, the professor, or a large Reddit post would signal the fact that, hey, there's this other card that shuffles everything in and resets the game and does wacky things. And there's a portion of the community that really doesn't like those cards, and someone is going to be feeling it's unfun, but that wasn't the point of the unban. The point of the unban is there is a very clear, prominent part of this community, me being one of them, that loves these cards. These are hilarious. They do wacky things. And when I get in a game of casual, that's what I want to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because the thing is that this is a card that costs 10 to cast. Yeah. And the original reasoning for its banning was essentially, hey, we don't want cards that make the previous X amount of time that you spent in a Commander game mean nothing. And this is kind of one of those cards. Yes. However, they dipped their toes in the water a number of years ago with the unbanning of Worldfire. And that basically received zero fanfare. It was seen in no games anywhere. It does this, but worse, because everyone's life total is 1. You like exile everything. You don't even shuffle. And it's not even on the game changers list. So basically, this is a card that's like that they looked at this, in my opinion, of course, and said, why is this here? Like, this doesn't need to be here. Commander is so different that now than what it was when this card was initially banned.
Yeah. And for those who have not seen a world fire in their game, I can't tell you the hilarious types of stories you will get out of a world fire game. I was killed by a dashed ragavan after a world fire, and I've never laughed harder. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen, and I will never forget that game. Will I like to see it every game? No. And will I see it every game? Absolutely not.
No, definitely not, because these are crazy high end, game changing, not game changers, game changing spells, but it's appropriately costed. It's sorcery speed. And if you all just decide that, yeah, you win the game, let's just shuffle up and play again. I think this is basically saying our ban list is getting clogged up with things that don't need to be there anymore. No one played Worldfire. Why is this on here? Let's just take it off. And that's what they did, in my opinion.
Yeah, let us have our toys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a really good way. There's a really good chance you're just never going to see this card, and everyone's going to forget about it.
Yep, absolutely. Next, we got Braid's Cabal Minion, which, for numerous reasons, was given the Turgid Salt reaction when it first was kind of hitting the scene, and the commander committee obviously felt in a lot of pressure that it was becoming increasingly frustrating. But as it's talked about here in the article, and again, a large answer to our question of why it would be unbanned, it has become extremely efficient to remove anything less than 3 power or toughness. We have a myriad suite of removal spells, and all of them cost so little. I couldn't even begin to count how many we've gotten in just the last 3 years.
Yep. And I can hear you all clamoring out there right now. Are you giving me the dies to removal argument as to why something should or should not be banned? No, we're not saying that. What we're saying is Commander is a way different game from back in, let me check, 2009 when this card was banned. It is a different game than what it was all the way 16 years later at the time of this recording.
Yeah.
We're just not in the same world that we were back then, because spells that were removal, they used to be slower, sorcery speed, it was supposed to be hyper casual, where your draft chaff was supposed to go. Commander's not that anymore. Swords of Plowshare has been printed so many times I can't even keep up anymore. It used to be a $5 card. I think it's like 50 cents now. Like, we're just so... Everybody understands that when you play Commander now, you do play means to interact with your opponents. And if you're going to play mono black Braid's Cabal Minion as your commander, you're already playing on the back foot to begin with. So a lot of times, the divisive community that says, "Oh, free braids" or "keep braids banned," and there's always that back and forth. It's almost a meme at this point.
Yeah,
we're really just it'd be nice to kind of see it out there, and you're going to probably see a lot of exhibition decks and probably bracket 2s, and some people trying to punch their way above into bracket 3. But honestly, there's just so much more that's come out since then with braids.
Absolutely. And if you've ever played against Turgid, 90% of the time, you just don't let it hit the board. And then as soon as it's there, you blow it up. And the Turgid player realizes they don't like playing the main villain. And the 1 or 2 times it gets to pop off, they have fun. They realize other people aren't. And they got to find the right group to play it in. And my group would love braids. We love being nasty. My Turgid deck is a fan favorite in my local group because the nutty discard shenanigans, because that's the type of EDH we play. That is never something I would ever even begin to think about going, do you guys mind if I play this at a Command Fest or at a MagicCon? It's a very different world. But luckily, the Commander community and all their diversity saw my world and is going to let me play it. And I'm really thankful for that.
And Turgid's worse than this. Straight up. Worse. No notes. It's just worse. Oh, like, yeah. It's worse to play against Turgid. I'd rather play against Braid every day than play against Turgid. So, and I think that they kind of weighed that into their decision making. It was like, well, we already have like pretty nasty, mono black decks that can do really crazy things. I'm talking, like I said, Turgid. I'm talking Keurig. I'm talking these crazy cards. Braids that makes you kind of, sacrifice some stuff. Oh, that's unfortunate. I don't like sacrificing, but trust me when I say it's okay for braids to come off the list. It's a good flavor win too, in my opinion.
I think everyone who plays this braids will quickly realize they want to play the new braids from the Brothers War more.
Yeah, the Arisen. Yeah, Arisen Nightmare, I think. Yeah. That's just a strictly better braids in every single way.
Yes. Moving on, we'll go to Coalition Victory. I want to hear Ryan's thoughts first because I got some poignant ones.
Oh, yes, yes. Good old coalition victory. So I was definitely of the camp that this was okay. Let me start this way. I understood perfectly well why Coalition Victory was banned and the reasoning behind its banning for so long. A bunch of times in the old days of Magic, the old days of Commander, I should be specific, when you were like, we did this, we did that, we went back and forth, and the whole game was hanging on a thread the whole time, and then somebody just cast Coalition Victory and the big game was over. You didn't say, "Oh, well, that was a good game." You're like, that was very anticlimactic. That wasn't very fun, And so the whole point of Commander is to have fun. It's casual format. And so I understood the reasoning behind it. But to kind of go back to my Braids argument from before, a lot's changed in the years since Coalition Victory was banned. All you have to do is remove one of their creatures that represents their colors. A lot of times it's just their 5-color commander. Or do something to one of their lands. And they just spent 8 mana on a sorcery, 3 in Wooburg, no less, on nothing. Because it'll resolve and just do nothing. And so I think that's okay. It's a big enough mana spell that's going to happen late in the game to the point where you're going to be able to do something about it, especially if you play a game and they kind of got you with the Coalition Victory. Yeah, they're going to see that coming the second time around. That's going to be your kind of one-trick pony, and you're never going to really be able to get that in on them again. And you're going to find out frequently that they're like, I just turn skipped myself, and I lost my commander. That was not very fun, and they'll end up probably removing it from their deck. I actually don't think beyond this first 6 months when everyone's going to play with the new toys that this is even going to see play.
No, and I think it runs into the symbiotic relationship you just talked about, where if you have a good play group, you do play with people consistently, and you do have a card like this in your deck, it's never going to work the second time. And I experienced this playing CEDH in playing Yisan and my local CEDH meta. The moment people figured out how the deck works, it being mono green and a bit of a mystery to a lot of people, Yisan got removed turn 2 every game. I never got to sit around, and Coalition Victory is going to experience the exact same history. But I think Coalition Victory's unbanning actually starts a really exciting conversation about the line of text. You win the game if. I think that right there is one of the biggest conversations that I think is still yet to be had about cards, where these cards are a class of their own in a 1v1v1v1 format. It's free for all. The win the game clause is the biggest part of what made CEDH explode since Thassa's Oracle. Lab Maniac was already doing that, and now we've exploded even further. And Coalition Victory is about to bring that conversation way far down the ladder. And I'm going to get to hear a lot more opinions about it. I'm going to get to hear a lot more either grievances or acceptance of it, and whether or not this mechanic really has a place in Commander. Is it really something that is going to be enjoyed? And now everyone who, puts this in a bracket 2 or higher, I can't remember, is this a game changer, Ryan?
All the unbanned cards immediately go to the game changers list.
Then anything bracket 3 or higher that experiences this will be now a bigger part of that conversation. And it's a conversation I'm begging to have happen. So I'm excited about it in that way.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a really good point to bring up, that this is something that I think might awaken people to the other side of how you kind of will end a game of Commander.
Yes.
In the CDH world, it's part and parcel. You win the game is so much more efficient than trying to kill everyone with combat, and trying to pick people off one at a time. Just this, hey, this resolves, game is over, I win, because CDH is hyper efficient. And it didn't really find itself in the lower brackets. It didn't find itself really anywhere else. And now we're having, Coalition Victory kind of come onto everyone's radar because it's now unbanned. And people might start to look at some of the other things like, well, how else can I maybe just win the game? And they might look at things like Felidar Sovereign or something. Yeah, the one where if you have 40 life on your upkeep, you win the game. That's a card that's been long forgotten. Mm-hmm. And that card used to be kind of a menace in early days of Commander.
The Allura players went wild. And we went mild.
I
It
mean,
was.
it also had to wait for an upkeep and all this other stuff,
Oh
and
yeah.
gave plenty of people plenty of time to react. And like I said, it's just not the same commander it was back then. But and then there's other things too. Test of Endurance at one time was banned. Actually, by the way,
Yes.
Test of Endurance was banned. It was one of the earliest banned cards, other than some of the original vintage list.
Yeah.
But yeah, like seeing these types of cards that might start to creep their way down into the lower ranks might cause friction. We'll have to
Yep.
see if this ends up being a cascade effect or if it just ends up kind of, in my opinion, another sway of the stars.
Yes. So, viewers watching and those listening as well, please let us know what you think about game changers that say you win the game. We're very
You
interested
win
in
the
that.
game. Yep.
Last but not least, Panoptic Mirror. I was hit
Second,
with
second to last, but not least. We
second
haven't
to
talked about
last.
Gifts Ungiven last. We're going to
Oh,
give it a
yeah.
little section all its own, but yes.
Yeah, as it deserves. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
I loved that this was a pet card. I loved that this was something that someone loved at some point and brought up, and everyone said, you know what, Timmy, I want you to have fun. Please go enjoy yourself. And my friend was that Timmy in high school and tortured us with this. And the reason we all started running Artifact Hate, and it was fun for our play group. It was warping, it was game changing, but it was nothing that ever ruined the play group. It wasn't someone bringing Thassa's Demonic to the table when we all were learning Commander. It was big 10 mana, cool game ender on turn 8. You know, it was always fine. And seeing here now, like it says, the ladder is something to be a lot less worried about in 2025. I couldn't have said it better. They just spell it out so well in the article. And it also does address the fact that there is a lower overall density of extra turn effects. And regardless of the bracket system, many tables have a good idea of whether they enjoy that type of infinite. So it does take into the consideration that many of us who do play this game already talk about this type of combo.
The first thing that people always think of when they think Panoptic Mirror is they think Panoptic plus extra turn spell equals infinite turns. That's kind of what everyone's mind immediately goes towards.
Yes.
And when you start to dissect what that looks like, that is 5 for Panoptic Mirror, another 5 usually at least for an extra turn spell that doesn't have some crazy big drawback.
Yeah.
It's just, usually just 5 and I get to take an extra turn. And you got to wait till the upkeep. That's a lot that has to go right in today's Commander in order to have that actually resolve.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that it's Panoptic Mirror, I think, for years was punished for the crimes of those extra turn spells, when in fact it could just be just really, really cool effects that can be stapled onto this. We're talking any instant or sorcery. Any instant or sorcery. We're talking Swords of Plowshares to remove something on the upkeep.
Ooh.
We're talking Cultivate every upkeep. We're talking, I mean, I could go on forever because there's so many that could just automatically happen every upkeep. And I can see that being used after the shine, if you will, of the extra turn loop goes away.
And it's such a blast. I mean, putting something fun under this is so exceedingly like multiplicative in the way it gets to succeed in a Commander game. I used to use Isochron Scepter before this was unbanned for that reason in a lot of our casual games, where I'm like, I'm just imprinting some ramp spell or something hilarious where every turn I'm going to get to keep using this thing almost like it was entwined.
Yeah. Entwine. It's a really good way to put it, is to entwine. It's like we're going to combine these effects and we're going to get this crazy, really good, value of whatever it might be. But let's be honest here. If we really want to end the game, you have to wait a turn cycle, spend 10 mana at least to do it. Okay. Once again, this is one of those things that, it's happening late enough in the game that if that's the way it's going to go, that's the way it's going to go. But let's also take a quick glance back at what the Commander brackets tell us. And what does the Commander bracket 3 say is a very important thing that you can't do? I'm sorry, 1 through 3, I should actually say more specifically. I'm going to harp on one specific point. No chaining extra turns. That is actually a specific call out in the brackets. Exhibition Core and Upgraded. No chaining of extra turns, which means Panoptic Mirror, even though it's a game changer, is automatically put into brackets 4 and 5. So if you're going to do that, go ahead and do that. So once again, this in combination with the brackets is going to put itself into a world where if you're going to put it in something like upgraded with, a couple of game changers, then you're not going to be doing the extra turn thing. And if you're going to put it into brackets 4 and 5, you're probably not going to see that effect actually get to go off because no one's going to let it sit around.
And that just shows how carefully crafted and genius the game changers list and the bracket system is. Now the only question is this too much for a new player to grasp? It's no longer, is it a good system?
That's a really good point. And that will probably take us into, well, before we go into game changers, I do want to talk about our final one.
Absolutely.
That's Gifts Ungiven. You and I have opinions about this one. So yes. I'll let you start off with the opinions on this.
Where do I start? So a while back, let's just do a little bit of history lessons for you. There was this incredible player that was in a finals of a tournament and decided, wait a minute, I can only pick 2 cards and fail to find the other 2. And Gifts Ungiven now becomes an instant 2-card into my graveyard combo. And if you want to talk about flexibility, if you want to talk about reliability, consistency, you're just going to slap all these words on this card right now and more, and then you're going to realize 4 years from now and wherever this goes that it only gets better. It only gets more consistent. It only gets more interesting. And it has so many places, but it's going to find its home in some of the most powerful decks, if not the most powerful deck ever made in Magic's history. And now in CEDH, and it's only going to make that deck more potent. But it's also, and it's not really been, I feel like, the talk of the town yet, especially on Reddit and Discord that I've seen, this did upgrade certain archetypes that I play a ton, Soul Tie as one of them, in a lot of ways. And so before I go into the nitty gritty, what is your first reaction here, Ryan?
So I think that, like I said, each one of these cards kind of touched on a certain part of the community to kind of give them and show them that this entire panel was listening. Gifts Ungiven, that was for CEDH, in my opinion. That was kind of what they were targeting. And I think that they unbanned this card because they're like, yeah, some people will use it, but it's not going to be this like crazy wave that's going to come through and change the face of the CEDH meta, which is why it's going off the list to begin with.
Yeah,
it's a niche card. I hate to compare this to Intuition because it's not Intuition, but Intuition exists. I can see this being played in certain decks that have the ability, that want the ability to do these certain things. I can see a lot of people trying it out in CEDH to see how well and consistent and reliable it can be. I can see a lot of people finding out that it's not actually going to give them what they want.
Yes.
But I also think that this will see CEDH play. There's a lot more I have to say about it, but initially it's, it could be a good budget card. There's other factors that I'll get into here in just a second, but like overall, I think it's a fine card, and I think it deserved to be off the list. I don't think they made a mistake there, but I think it'll be fun.
And we'll definitely go more into it after we talk about more about the Game Changers update. Clearly, Gifts Ungiven has a lot that it's going to be potent for, and we'll get into that because this is a CEDH podcast, and we are going to be talking about how it affects CEDH specifically. But kind of going into what happened here, there was not just one article. We got a lot more. A big part of this article going down did address, and I'd love to talk about this before we move on, the big 3, as I'd like to say. We have a mourning to be had. We're supposed to be sad about this. I am. Dockside, Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt are now locked away. Like they have now confirmed for a whole year we are losing these cards. And that is a promise to the community. But it very clearly listed the fact that Jeweled Lotus is the most likely to come off this. And next year we have a high chance of seeing it.
A high chance of it being considered.
Considered, yes.
Yeah. So when you can tell that this was probably proofread like 100 times, this section of the article showcases that the most. Because I will be transparent and say that I believe that if any of these are ever to return, the most likely one is Jeweled Lotus due to its one-shot nature, iconic feel, and ability to help support high mana value commanders. I want to be clear, this is not me saying that it will ever happen, but that was the one among the panel with the most traction. So you see how deliberate they are being with their language here. We're not really considering the others. We are possibly considering Jeweled Lotus. It's not going to happen for at least a year, and there's no guarantee that it is even going to happen. But if it were to happen, it would probably be that one. So much language just to say, yeah, we're looking at Jeweled Lotus, which is what the old kind of updates always look like. Yeah, we're looking at Jeweled Lotus. That's what the old Commander updates used to look like.
Yeah. And we got an extra tidbit of information in the previous paragraph where they go into detail about there were a few people who were open to doing something with Jeweled Lotus now, but that was not the majority opinion. So to me, this comes off as there are definitely talks happening about Jeweled Lotus, but doing it this early, there's a lot of opinions and conversations about would it be respectful? Would it be too quick for the economy? Would it really show that they're actually putting in thought, effort, consideration for these cards if this happened, this unbanning? And I think if any of these were touched right now, it could have sent the wrong message going forward about what they stand for, that the fact that they are new and that they aren't just going to instantly bend to whatever, but also the fact that these cards were not considered as much going into the bracket system. They weren't a part of the ecosystem when they developed the Game Changers list. They weren't in the ecosystem when they try to talk about and define what a bracket 4 versus bracket 5 is. And these cards alone, if these three came back, could be the rift between 4 and 5 for all we know. And so it sets into precedent the fact that we need time for this list to make sense before we touch it. And it's great that they're doing that.
Yeah, I agree. And all your points, I also 100% agree with. Number one, the last thing that the new regime wants to do is to undo the last thing of the old regime. Yeah. So the first command should not be to undo the last command of the old regime. I agree with that 100%. So the first thing that they shouldn't have done is, well, whatever they did, I want to undo it. So put all of them back in. Yeah. That's the first thing I think was really smart on their part. The second thing I think was also really smart on their part was the fact that if you set the precedent that says if you death threat people enough, if you rage enough, if you start to, you really start to go after people enough, you'll eventually get your way. And I think that sends a horrible message to people that basically says, anytime I want to ban something, or if you don't unban something, I'll just death threat all the commander format panel. I'll just make sure I'll make their lives absolutely miserable, and then I can get what I want, just like a petulant child. So I think them sticking to their guns and saying, these cards, no, you're not getting them right now. And even if you did, it's only going to probably be this one. I think that was a really good way to stand firm about what they believe in and stand strong in the face of what happened in the calamities of last year. So I think that was really powerful on their part, and I think they made the right choice.
And I want to make it at least somewhat clear about the fact that us sitting here in this table, yeah, we cared about these cards. I don't know if this helps that notice. I was very excited to see these. I miss them.
Me too.
But do I think that this was the correct decision? If any decision was made, was this the right one? It was.
Yes, I agree. And that is coming from a diehard, hardcore CDH player who loved these cards and would love to see them unbanned. Absolutely. But not like this. Not in this way. And if they remain banned forever to make sure that that kind of stuff never happens again, that's fine. I won't lose a wink of sleep forever, because I will never stand for anything like that again. I don't want anything like that to ever happen again. And that's okay with me if these are the sacrificial lambs in order to ensure that always happens going forward.
Yeah. It's utmost important we maintain the fact that we're a community first.
Community first. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And so with that kind of context going forward, they then were so incredibly respectful that they went through every card that was not unbanned and worthy of being talked about, because we have an obvious list that aren't coming off and needed no any, explanation. But for those who want to dig into maybe a card that you either spec'd on or were expecting to see come off this list, you got an entire appendix of reasons. And some of them, and I love to touch on one real quick, which was Flash. And that was something that a lot of people that never played against it went, I'm kind of feeling it. Why not? And it says in CDH, so many games were coming down to Flash and Protean Hulk, leading to Flash's ban. I want you to see that a commander announcement has the words CEDH in it and just be thankful for a moment. I don't, this is a long way from where we started. This is really exciting. And then going on to say cheating in enter effects with Flash is only going to become more powerful with time. It's staying banned.
Two things. First of all, they went over every single card that is still on the list to reinforce the decisions and the deliberations they had on this ban list. How thorough this article was.
It's so cool.
Yeah. The idea that they actually said, let's actually go through all of them. That way there's no ambiguity. They're like, I can't believe they wouldn't unban Golos, or I can't believe they left, they wouldn't unban Flash. You could see exactly what their thought processes was for every single card, with the exception of the ones that are just obvious, Black Lotus and, dexterity cards and crazy cards that just don't work, and anti and stuff. Like literally every one they went through, it's like they didn't leave any stone unturned. And I love that. I love that they actually took the time, put the words onto digital paper and said, now you know what we're thinking. Now you know our thought processes. And if you see anybody, griping online, you can tell they probably didn't read the article, because it goes over every single one of the cards.
Yeah, and it doesn't just go over the cards in their current state. It goes over their future. It talks about what's next for these cards. And for a lot of us, they weren't vague, in my opinion. A lot of them were very clear about the future of them. And it talks about what would have to change and how it would have to change, and even the circumstances surrounding what the change would be. Hull Breacher got an excellent note about that. It said, there is a theoretical rejiggering of brackets where you could tell me this is acceptable, but I wouldn't expect it. So it not only details what would change or how it would change, it would also talk about the certainty with it. And so I think they did an excellent job with this section. It's more than we would go over in the full podcast, so I definitely implore you should go over all of these, especially for cards you cared about. But they did an excellent job, and that's my takeaway from this, is that, oh my Lord, this commander cares. This is a new panel.
Yes, and you could tell that they are passionate about what they're saying. I'm absolutely loving what they're doing here. Keep it up. If any of you ever listen, which I hope you do, but I doubt you do, keep it up. You're doing a fantastic job. A+.
Yes. Well, we're moving on to talking about the Game Changers list next.
Ooh, Game Changers list. This is an interesting one.
Yes.
So
they wanted to have us sit with them in a communal way about this bracket system when it came out. They immediately were like, hey, here's some conventions coming up. Please come talk to us, ask us questions, give us opinions, spam us on Twitter, spam us on Blue Sky. And they asked for feedback, and they got it. And they then went into detail to percentage it out for us. And so I'd love to read this as we start this section. In the official survey done at MagicCon Chicago, 87% of people who tried the bracket system said it was helpful in their games. I was one of those 87%. I told Gavin, I love it. This helped so much, and I could tell you why. But Ryan, this first section about the bracket system, how did it come to you?
So basically, to me, I think that, what they're talking about with the bracket system and how they're doing it, overall, I kind of am the same consensus. This is a great system to help start conversations, and I'm putting emphasis on start. This does not replace conversations. This is not a substitute for a pregame conversation. This is a good way to help get a better and more even playing field to start an actual conversation of how you want a game to go. And it's a lot easier to be able to put these into here. They said when they tried this out that this is the kind of the first iteration of it. And as the article reads on, you can say that, hey, we are thinking of making some tweaks and changing some things and turning some knobs on it, but the adoption isn't there yet. Commander moves slowly. So we need to kind of set and let it bake for a while before we really start to maybe make any changes. Changes are in our mind and we are considering them, but right now we're going to kind of leave it as is. And in my opinion, I think that was the right call.
Yeah. And they've proved the fact that there is a depth and level of investment with every player that they've talked to, although skewed being it at a MagicCon, and that's something I think needs to be brought up.
Yes.
But the fact is, a majority of players that do play Commander that are ever going to run into this system, so we're not talking about those at home with precons from Walmart enjoying their kitchen table, those invested enough to have heard about the bracket system and touched it, an overwhelming majority have loved it. And its love for it comes from a place of less social stress. When you begin a Commander game now, it's not that this was a perfect system, but it made the conversation easy. Is the conversation better? They're not even claiming it is. That's not this article, but they're saying it did, in fact, start conversations, make them easier to have. And for some people, they pointed out the fact that they found it easier to get better games in. And I experienced that every time I've used a bracket system so far.
Yeah, when I was using the bracket system at MagicCon Chicago, I was also there for that. And as a content creator, you don't get to play as many games as people think you do when you're at a MagicCon. But in the games that I did where I used a bracket system, it made it very, very seamless. Now, it didn't foolproof it. Like I said, there were still things that were like, oh, that totally violates exactly what this bracket system said you should not have in the deck. But here we are, But at the same time, it didn't lead to an absolutely ruined game and everything was awful and I hated every second of it. I knew what to expect going in. I wasn't going in completely blind. Oh, that's what your deck does. That's roughly in line with what I want to do. What kind of experience are we looking for? Okay, that's outside of the bracket system, but at least we have the guardrails now to help with that conversation a lot.
Yeah.
And one final aside to that, you said, oh, CDH is in here. CDH is bracket 5 and it's labeled as bracket 5. CDH is a part of this Commander format. There's no ambiguity left. Ever since the brackets exist, we are here and we're here to stay.
Yeah. And that's a good point. We're a part of it. It's not that we're separate. And Ryan, you have preached that for how many years now?
Oh, I started in 2018, but officially in 2019.
Yes. And it creates a very important feedback loop. I'm hoping some viewers here, you guys have maybe started to experience this yourselves. You went to the bracket system and I caught myself, and this is something I'd love for people to be a little bit more honest about. I didn't know what bracket 2 was when I read this. I thought I did. I didn't. I realized my bracket 2 decks were bracket 1. They had no win cons. They couldn't function. I was making some bracket 1 mess and learned about, okay, I can still add some synergy and be low power, be at this nice core status of a precon, because I was always worried to offend. I didn't want to put things that could end a game in a deck because I felt like precons couldn't do that. But I was sorely mistaken. I had not been playing modern precons since 2018, and I did not realize that that core had moved far beyond the precons I used to pick up a target in high school and college. And now as an adult, I'm realizing that they actually started putting some, thumbtacks in their Nerf guns. And so I have now experienced a lot of self, reflection and learning from these bracket systems that have improved me as a deck builder for brackets 1 through 3. Did I grasp 4 and 5 before this system was out? Absolutely. I've had no issue with that. But I think a lot of players are going to learn their issue going into the previous socially accepted system of 1 through 10 power for those who used it. It was not the power level that was the problem. It was barely a system. It was the fact that no one knew how to rate themselves yet. And we are going to have to take this next year where the bans aren't being touched to start thinking, start learning, start understanding deck building from the brackets perspective.
And that's a really good way to put it, because a lot of times what'll happen is you already have your decks, right? and people have had their decks sometimes for a decade. I
Oh
have
yeah.
a Perforos God of the Forge deck. I'm not joking. I've had it since 2014.
Yeah.
That's a long time to have a deck. And
Yeah.
so now you have this what's the best way to put this? A discombobulation, or a kind of a disconnection, because between, you're like, oh, I have a Perforos deck, so where does it fall? Well, it's kind of this, but kind of that, and it doesn't really have a real home in this area. And so that does cause a little bit of friction. And that kind of brings the first point where I would say that this could probably use a little bit of improvement. And,
Yes.
I'm not saying I know how to make this and I'm the only one who has the answers, but like, it's really, really, really good if you're brewing a deck, because now you have the guardrails to say exactly how you can brew this deck.
Yeah.
Whereas if you already had a deck, it's kind of hard to find out where it is. And sometimes you might have to make some pretty hard or tough choices for cuts to try and make it fit into one of these brackets. And there's also
Yeah.
discussions about whether or not there should even be a bracket one. Does this really deserve a place?
Yeah.
And we could talk about that stuff all day long. But like,
Yes.
so
And it really took into the idea that, like, if you're going to be using these bracket systems, they're not lying to you. You're most likely going to have to review the deck and or make changes for it to really fit the system. They don't think
yes,
everything fits into the bracket system. The bracket system is something you use. It's a part of deck building in a lot of ways. It's not
yes,
an evaluation strategy as just in a one-sided way. It's just a very three-dimensional system. And it goes into that here where intent is the most important part of the bracket system, and intent starts with the building of the deck. When you built that deck, that's where intent started. And when I built, same exact time as Ryan, I built my Krufix and Hydra's deck. I built it because I wanted to see what was the biggest Hydra I could make, because I didn't know about infinite mana. I was new to the game and I thought, this floats mana? Well, I want to see how many turns the game goes. And then on the last turn, drop a Hydra. It's so big, my friends won't be able to attack me. It's a wall. And that was fun and it was exciting. And that is a bracket one deck. and, and, uh, and that shows my intent. It shows that. And they've done such a good job at talking about intent finally.
yes. Yeah, I agree. Because like, there's questions about, like I said, whether or not exhibition should exist. What's the difference between 4 and 5, optimize and CEDH? And
Yes.
a lot of people have tried to explain that and kind of failed. Like, there's
Very.
still not a lot of great explanation around that yet. That might be an episode for us in the future, but
That's an
um,
entire episode. Easy.
yeah, it really can be. I actually, one of the things Gavin said when he first created the bracket system, when it was like very first debuted, is I hate having 5 choices, because it's the same as having 10 choices and you just end up saying my deck is a 7. Well, everyone's just going to say their deck's a 3 if you only have 5 choices, because you're going to slam yourself
Yes.
square in the middle. And so I kind of agree with that. Like, maybe having something like exhibition not being on there, or maybe maybe something melding between 4 and 5 might be better. But I'm eager to see what they come up with, because so far they've done a pretty good job, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that they've not only done a good job at being open about what the future is and about their current gripes with the system, but they're also doing a good job of being honest about what they know they have right. And that's what this Game Changers list is. We are looking at delisting certain Game Changers and listing Game Changers. And so the cards and questions for the delisting was Trouble in Pairs, Trinisphere, and then after that, it's all additions. But they gave explanations as to why these weren't impacting the games that they were seen in. They can be game changers if they're used in certain brackets a certain way, and we never saw them used in those ways. That would be a game change. And so this is the most honest, awesome reflection I've seen out of any review, honestly, ever since Modern's heyday, when they were talking about bans and unbans in Modern back in its huge time on Channel Fireball. Back then, if you weren't around for this, we got a lot of discussion around what a healthy ban and unban cycle was back then and how frequent things should be. And this is giving me those vibes. I feel like I'm being talked to at a professional level about cards now, not hey, we're trying to have fun. It's Commander. It's like, no, in actuality, Trinisphere hurt no one. This thing does not matter against the precon. All of your cards are 3 mana plus.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, and I see, because like to me as I can't help but sometimes look at things from a CDH lens. By and large, it is the most of the way that I play Commander, with few exceptions.
Yes.
And Trinisphere is backbreaking in CDH. It is so annoying to play against. And then as you play a casual game, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this card does nothing. Yeah, even if you try and drop it on like turn 1 or something, it's still not doing anything except for just making everybody play land pass, which everybody does in the first 2 turns anyway in casual games. Yeah.
Yes.
It's so like Trinisphere is fine. If somebody wants to play Trinisphere, go ahead. You're not changing much.
Yep. And if anything, and this was something that I think was left out of the article that I think they had to for posterity's sake, keep having it on the list makes people know more about the card. If you see a card on the Game Changers list, you're going to go, oh, what's this? There were potentially scenarios where someone went on, saw Trinisphere and went, ooh, I'm going to build a bracket 3 stacks list, and this is going to be one of my really strong stacks pieces for my bracket 3. So I think it's also a little bit of that, but that's speculation.
Yeah, I think so. And the other one, which is Trouble in Pairs,
yes.
I think this was posted online, and I think it was very well articulated in one sentence. This is the card that battles Game Changers.
Yep.
Whenever an opponent attacks you with more creatures, draws their second card, or casts their second spell, each turn you draw a card. So things that kind of like go along the lines of things like Ristic Studies and things like that. And if an opponent would begin an extra turn, the player skips that turn. Okay, the higher brackets, with the infinite turns kind of loops and stuff like that. Trouble in Pairs was the antithesis of this. It was the way to counteract that. And then to throw it on the Game Changers list, I was like, that was a really good point to bring up. This was the silver bullet against a lot of Game Changers. So I agree that this is fine to come off the list personally.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Next, we've got our Game Changers editions. And we don't need to go into every card, obviously, because that would take quite often, a good 30 minutes a card at this point.
There are 18 Game Changers being added.
Yes.
18.
A general consensus.
That's a big number.
Yeah. A general consensus is that the list has now grown to a size that feels for some players unmanageable. I know tonight, while we were recording games with some other creators, that we all consistently said, wait a minute, is this a game changer? And it did become a discussion of, can I keep track of this?
And I think this is I've been gushing about them and stuff like that. And I want to be transparent here. I think this was a miss. I know that a lot of CDH players were clamoring for all of our problems should be on the Game Changers list. Put Rograk and Timna on there and stuff like that. And where's Necropotence and Orcish Bowmasters? And it's like, this is exactly what happens when you get exactly what you want.
Yep.
It's too big. I couldn't tell you everything that was on it right now. I can guess, and I bet you I'll miss 3/4 of them. And I'm a content creator who stays pretty active in this community, more so than I would say most. And there's no way I could keep up with how big this list is. I think it's unmanageable already.
Yeah. It does include a lot of cards that I agree should have been on the first iteration, and I know many have said that. But at the same time, like we're talking about, these cards are now put on a radar by being on this list. They're now more apparent to the community. And so it did take out things that were clearly now under the radar because of the list. People said, hey, this card's not on the list. I can start putting it in lower bracket games and it be okay for me, which is a huge, one red flag about the people you're playing with. The bad actor syndrome has absolutely seen its, the light of day is crested for a lot of these people because they are going, I can build this bracket too. And look, it's still bracket 2. It's crazy. I can win on turn 3. And everyone goes, do you hear the incrimination in your tone? Because you were the person that wanted to win or wanted to, giant air quotes, pub stomp.
those are bad faith actors, and they show just how stupid they are. And I'm not afraid to use that word by pretending to sound how smart they are. Look,
Yeah.
I found the flaw in your system. How look, pat me on the back. And it's like, okay, come up with a better one.
Yeah.
You know,
There
you're
was
so
nothing
smart.
interesting about
Yeah.
any of these lists. We're like, yeah, we get it. We know those cards and they're not on the list. Congrats.
Yeah. Congratulations on showing the world just how insufferable you are. You know, like, thank you for letting me make sure I avoid you at every step of the way.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, in some aspects, thank God for this. You've let me show everyone who I don't want to associate or be around. I don't want to
Yeah.
play with people like that. And,
Yeah.
but to kind of going back to your point a little bit, like, should some of these things have been on there? Absolutely. Yeah, we're not going to go into every one of these, but I'll touch on a quick a few highlights that I think should be on there. Necropotence should be on there. I agree
Yeah.
with that. I 100%. Aura shards should be
Oh,
on there. And that's casual. That's not That's not coming from a CDH mindset. That's from
no.
casual mindset. That's a miserable card to play against.
Yes.
Food chain. Yeah, no one plays a fair food chain. They only break they're no one's value food chaining. They're only
That's
trying to break
always
it.
the joke. It's a value food chain.
It's a value food
I
chain.
promise. It's a value Nas.
Yeah. But a lot of the others that are on here, no, I don't agree that they should be on the game changers list. Like some of them, yes, absolutely. But a lot of the things that CDH players were clamoring that should be on the game changers list, even originally, like that were initially part of it, I don't think should be on there. Deflecting SWAT. Oh, you're going to change the game by redirecting a single spell. Wow, you know, pull up the gates. Let's bar the doors on how crazy that card is. Yeah, it's a free redirect. Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
It also scales with the table, you know, so of course CDH players are going to think in a world full of stack wars and counter magic how powerful it is.
A red card that scales with the table. I don't.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know.
I can't think of any others. Yeah. That's the only one. Yeah. And other people were like, well, you know, in my infinite, you know, just really wanting to make sure that cycles are completed, they should put all the one drop tutors on there. No, they shouldn't. It's okay that they're not on there. But then they kind of caved and said, fine, we'll put it on there. Everyone's screaming and crying because people don't like, you know, uneven patterns. And so Worldly Tutor and Gamble ended up on this list when they don't belong on there, in my opinion.
No, not at all. Worldly Tutor was the one that I kind of went, all right.
The one where I truly scratched my head and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I really had to dig for it was crop rotation.
Yeah, this was something where a lot of people felt like lands specifically were a really difficult thing to talk about when it comes to game changers because you can't counter a land and a lot of people don't prepare for land destruction. And it falls in this unique spot, like we talked about earlier, about where cards are played, where Trinisphere is not potent at a lower level. And so people, one, don't prepare or care about Trinisphere. The problem is a lot of people do not want to play against certain lands and they don't prepare for it and they're going to see it played at a lower bracket. And crop rotation made that a bit consistent. And so that was the argument for this card going on the game changing list. The issue with that is that was the most informed, dissected opinion that I just imparted toward your ears. That is not something someone playing a bracket 1 and bracket 2 thinks or goes into. That was a high level discussion imparted upon those who don't care.
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, it's like, well, we can have up to 3 game changers. Well, if you put a crop rotation in there, you know, Gaia's Cradle was one of the game changers on the initial list. So was Ancient Tomb. So being able to get that consistently, even though it was a game changer, allowed you to be able to have that plus some other stuff.
Yep.
So narrowing it by adding crop rotation allowed to make that a little bit more inconsistent because the moment that you're, you know, pushing now this, you know, crop rotations in there, that's one of your 3 game changers. So either it's got to get pushed out or now you're in bracket 4 and now you're in a whole other world. So I can see from that level, but that's getting a little bit too meta. That's digging a little bit too deep into the holes, in my opinion, to make that all work. I appreciate how much they're thinking about this, but I think they might have cooked with that one a little bit too much.
Yeah. I have one more thought before moving on from this list, which is actually Orcish Bowmaster. And it comes at a unique angle where it's a new card that people care about, gets talked a lot about, and was popular due to its notoriety and the the popularity of the set it was in. And so it is seen a lot. It's liked a lot. It's also a very pretty card. I don't know if you've seen that full art foil, but it's gorgeous.
It
I
is
love the poster or
part
not
of
poster
the yeah
foils.
part of the big mosaic one.
Yeah, the mosaic foils.
Beautiful.
Those are incredible. So I was sitting at a table in Chicago, and our table started getting a bit surrounded because I was playing with my good friends Dark Pact, Danny Phantom, and Tappy Toeclaws. If you've ever met Tappy, they are quite loud. They like to be excited, and they were also doing the Chandra cosplay. And so I have a little picture here that I would love to impart upon you of when I played a Windfall, and the person directly in front of me played Orcish Bowmaster during a bracket 2 game. And Danny sits there, realizing him being the threat at the table was about to be gunned down. And I can't tell you how often during bracket 2 games that I did play at a con, Orcish Bowmaster showed up and became the entire game, which is what we describe as a game changer. And so I think Orcish Bowmaster was actually a really big deal to get on this list, and the only one going into this announcement that I was hoping to see added. Everything else I was like, I'll understand if it is, but Orcish Bowmaster was actually affecting my games and starting to get annoying because I didn't want to see it in my bracket 2 and 1 games. It is just such a frustrating card at that level.
Yeah, I think overall their decisions made sense.
Yes.
I just think there are too many of them. And that's a logistics issue that just comes from a game that's 30 plus years old.
Yeah.
You know, you're just going to have these types of cards, but it's already unmanageable. So I'm not saying I have the solution. I'm just saying that there is a problem here, and I hope they find a clever way to be able to resolve it. They're pretty smart. There's some smart folks over there. I do have faith that they probably will. But as it currently stands, I think there's too many cards on this list. I can't keep track.
Yes. And boy, the one card I'm excited, as we've talked about and wanted to get into, and that I have a slew of content being made about right now, is Gifts Ungiven. And for those who never got to play with this card, I'm so sorry. I'm also so excited for you. This is about to be a big step, in my opinion, because we're introducing something called Perfect Piles. Take it away, Ryan.
You take it away, Perfect Piles.
I guess. I'm not excited about it.
But basically, yeah. Essentially, this card, just as a quick bit of history here, if you look through as you're trying to suddenly snap by as everyone's trying to cash in on the fact that this card got unbanned right now by going to TCG Player and stuff, and they're like 14, 15, who knows what they'll be tomorrow, $20 or whatnot. One of the printings of this is From the Vault Exiled. Now, for those of you who don't know, the From the Vault series was like this little box set that came out once a year that had a kind of theme to it. Well, one of the ones from that particular year was From the Vault Exiled. And what that was a card that at one time was banned or restricted in a major format of Magic the Gathering. Gifts Ungiven is one of the cards in From the Vault Exiled. Now,
it looks beautiful, by the way. Just
saying. Yeah, absolutely. So where does Gifts Ungiven come from? Gifts Ungiven isn't put into From the Vault Exiled because of Commander. Gifts Ungiven was back in 2007, was restricted in Vintage for how oppressive Gifts Ungiven was. And kind of like going into what you were saying, it just created perfect piles.
Yes.
It was just, it is a powerful card. We're far away from 2007.
But in a powerful format?
Yeah, yeah. But it was eventually banned from Commander in June of 2009. Yes, that's correct. And it didn't get unbanned until today. And kind of just piggybacking off of a lot of the stuff that Vintage was doing. Not to mention it was just creating these really unfun games back in 2009 because it was creating combo potential.
Yeah.
Whew, what a card. Interesting card.
And the interest that we're now getting, bottled up and ready to see in action is the fact that Gifts Ungiven is going to be added to some of the already best decks, if not the best deck in the format. And it's going to be a card that says, if this resolves, and I know that you no longer have interaction, or at least on the stack, I am 90% certain I have the win here, because this card in Blue Farm goes and gets Lion's Eye Diamond, Brain Freeze, Underworld Breach, and Savine's Reclamation. And this creates a no choice for the person picked, because there is now no longer a choice that can save you from losing the game on the spot. As of right now, if someone were to cast Intuition and they chose Underworld Breach, Brain Freeze, and Savine's, yeah, you've got those cards. You don't have the mana to start the loop. There was never a pile that said, I can win if nothing happens to these. And now we have that. And we have it for cards like Food Chain now as well. As Intuition was near useless for it previously in a lot of scenarios, it is now insanely useful with Gifts Ungiven. It's incredible. And so the skew that's happening is you can tell this card's blue. And sadly, most of the decks that are already the top run blue. And we're not going to see this card in decks that are honestly what we would call spicy or very innovative, or cards that aren't just piles of already the best things that we can abuse. This is not helping any deck climb the ladder. We're going to see the top decks cemented farther. But this does have what I would like to call the ad nauseum effect. It's the, we can't let this resolve, or you need to start sharing hand information about why you're going to let it. Because I'm not going to sit here and think that, whatever, Intuition, yeah, you have it. No, this is no longer Demonic Tutor. Nah, we counter what you tutor. No, Intuition's 4 freaking cards. This is where you start realizing you have to tutor what gets them the cards, and that's what Adnod does.
Yep, agreed. So my initial reaction to this, like I said earlier, was that it's going to be a niche card for CDH. It might not even end up seeing play or whatever. But then as you kind of unravel this card a little bit more, what you'll start to find is a lot of the power in this card. And there's a couple of different things that I really saw that I didn't see initially from it. Number one, this is a blue instant. Okay, well, instant tutors, all right, whatever, that's fine. Those exist other places too. This is a blue instant that tutors any card. Black is the only color that's supposed to do that. This tutors any card in blue. The fact that it's a universal tutor, 4 different names, whatever. This is Commander. That's basically tutor 4 cards from your deck. Oh, we would give this illusion of choice or whatever, but with some of the piles, it's not really the choice. Like you said, perfect piles. So the idea that we can give certain weaker color pairs now the ability to tutor any card they want. Teamer doesn't have access to black. Well, now you can go tutor whatever you want because you have Gifts Ungiven. The second thing is, you don't have to get all 4 cards.
Yes.
If you just want to tutor 2 things instantly to your graveyard, you can do that. Yeah, it's going to cost 4, but it can also tutor 2 game-ending combo pieces or 2 synergistic cards, like something with Dread Return. Just tutor that to your graveyard and cast it for its flashback cost. So you don't even need the 3rd and 4th card. So those types of things are also a factor in this Gifts Ungiven. And the final one is that they said, well, Intuition's here, Well, do you want 2 intuitions in your deck? Like, you want a second intuition in your opponent's decks? Yep. Like, it's still a very valuable card because of that. Yes, it costs 4. It is a little expensive. That's not to say that it's, impossible to cast, especially not in this meta. But like the idea that you're giving somebody a second intuition isn't a good thing.
And the fact that it's instant, and that's the thing that makes Adnaz incredible, is it's instant. It's not just its effect. And so the fact that this is fired off at end step or fired off on top of a pile, and if you want to watch some of our future games and you see me playing a deck with black in it, I cast a lot of Adnaz on top of game-winning spells and piles very often to good success. It is a very major way I win games, and I saw this get unbanned and went, my win rate's about to shoot up, because this thing fits my play style. And this is another conversation I think a lot of enfranchised players don't have because they don't recognize it as a conversation because it's not something they experienced because they're already enfranchised. But when you learn CDH, it's a lot easier to play a deck, let's say Blue Farm, when you realize that everyone tells you, oh, just find Adnaz, you'll win. And it's a nice way getting into the format that you realize, oh, okay, I don't need to stress about knowing complicated or complex combos. I know that if I cast Gifts Ungiven, I win. And that's now a thing. We are gaining a card that says I win the game if this resolves. Like, that's a big deal. And to the enfranchised players, yes, it's something that we understand, handle, are experienced with, all these things. But for the part of the community that doesn't play every single week, but does like CDH, this is a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of other things that we aren't even touching on that's going to, kind of evolve and come out as more and more people play this card. So it's only going to scale. Number one, it fetches any card, like I said earlier. So it's only going to get better as more good cards get printed.
Yeah.
But there's also like the politics aspect. Hey, I'm going to go fetch 4 game-winning, 4 cards to stop this. 2 of them are going to be counterspells. So you're going to have to put at least one of these counterspells into my hand. And I'm going to fetch, 2 graveyard pieces of my combo and 2 counterspells.
Yep.
So you're going to do this, or you're going to lose, which just puts you into another losing situation. So that's also another factor. And there's going to be more and more of this stuff as it comes out and as it continues to get played.
Yeah.
We'll find out what's going to happen.
Yeah. A very resourceful thing to do is have one of the pieces of a Gifts Ungiven pile or an Intuition pile in your hand, tutor it in response to someone else's spell and say, hey, by the way, I'm going to put these in my graveyard for the future, but I'm asking you to give me the counter spell. Now you're saving yourself from losing, and you're getting the win on your next turn.
Yes. So you might go fetch 4 cards, and 2 of them are your graveyard combo, but the other 2 are counter spells, one to help stop the current thing, and then the other one to help you win, protect your win on the next turn or whenever you're going to play. So a lot of power in this card.
I foresee myself tutoring Savine's Underworld Breach, Force of Will, and Grand Abolisher.
I foresee myself tutoring 4 lands. No, I'm just kidding.
No land mulligans will love this card.
That's right. Yeah, dump out my mana rocks. Cast this card. I see no downside to this plan.
Yes.
And so, just as a quick last point, I just wanted to kind of show some of the combos that have already come out for this card that you can probably already slot in, or even already have the spots for in your deck, and all you need to do is throw Gifts Ungiven to make it more consistent. The first one I've seen kind of floating around is Devoted Druid / Hazel's Brewmaster stuff. That includes Hazel's Brewmaster, Devoted Druid, and something that like recurs. So whether that be Savine's Reclamation, maybe it's Reanimate, maybe it's Ewit or Noxious Revival. Yep. A lot of those piles allows us to do the Brewmaster combo pretty quickly.
Correct. Yep. My list next had Thoracle, Decon, Reanimate, and then either Snapcaster Mage or Eternal Witness. That was an easy Thoracle pile that was thrown together recently. And then if you do not have access to that, Noxious Revival, if you have a way to draw.
Mm-hmm. A next one, which I thought was really cool, was Devoted Druid and Nature's Rhythm. That's it.
Oh, genius.
So you don't get a choice to put something in my hand because Nature's Rhythm can be cast from the graveyard. So Nature's Rhythm just got a huge bump because of this card. Because basically, you can cast it from your graveyard or your hand.
Yeah, so the idea with this layering wise, for those who are unfamiliar with Nature's Rhythm, I know it's a newer card. It's from the Last Dragons set. Nature's Rhythm is X green. It says it's a sorcery. Search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less. Put it into the battlefield, then shuffle. It then has a new mechanic called Harmonize. That text says X green. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its Harmonize cost. You may tap a creature you control to reduce that cost by an amount of generic mana equal to its power, then exile the spell. So there's also cheaper ways to cast it, but like you said, this makes it immediately cast, go get Hazel's Brewmaster, which then exiles the Devoted Druid in your yard as a food. Sorry, it turns it into a food and lets you get infinite green with the combo that you normally would with Swift Configuration, with it. And yeah, like you said, it's an instant win if you got the mana.
Yeah, I mean, like, and we also understand. Yeah, it has to do with you have to have the mana too. It's not just cast 4 and just win the game. Just like Ad Nauseam isn't just cast, play 5 and win the game, and we know that. But these lines are just going to get more and more efficient over time.
Yeah,
More people are going to brew it. More people are going to try it. These are just some of the ones that have come out since Gifts Ungiven has been initially unbanned. It's only going to get better with new sets. It's only going to get better as more people brew with it. So
yeah,
a lot of high hopes for this card.
yeah. There's a lot of what we call sad piles now. It's a little, I don't know if this term's gonna catch on, but it means that like it's not perfect, but if you have the mana, it is, which is things like Yawgmoth's Will, Underworld Breach, Thassa's Oracle, and Demonic Consultation, where that's kind of a sad pile and awkward and costs a lot of mana, but it's technically possible. But there is a single deck that I know me and one other member of Playing with Power in the past mained consistently, which was Inala. And this created a new perfect pile for Inala. Intuition was already a perfect pile for Inala, which for those of you who weren't aware. And as a result, you go get Spellseeker and any reanimation effects, and you're able to instantly kickstart a now, since current upgrades to the deck, is a 14 card pile instead of a 24 like it used to be. Or sorry, 14 step pile.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, we've narrowed it. It's a 9 card combo. It's not that bad.
Nala players.
Luckily,
I
somehow
love you so much.
every card in it useful individually except for the last mage you cast. And that was the only deck that this card affected in a lopsided way for a deck that wasn't huge. And so Inala getting something was really cool. Made me really happy. And so we will see more and more people realize as we go on that all the green piles, I'm going to go down some mana costs for us here so we understand. Ewit Reanimate Thoracle Consult, which is technically a green pile, is 1 blue, blue, green, green, blue, or sorry, 1 blue, blue, green, green, black, which is 6 mana. The next is 8 mana. 4 colorless green, 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 blue, which is the Ewit Reanimate Kennen Basalt. And we can go further, but this mana only grows. The pips only get farther. This isn't something that's going to break green. It's possible, but we need to understand that that first pile I just mentioned was already 10 mana. The second pile was 12 mana. It's a lot.
Yeah. And like you could put something like Noxious Revival if you time it right. So it's only going to cost 2 life instead of a green. So that might help it a little bit. And, there are little ways to help with things like that. So like, for example, if I do Thoracle Consult, Reanimate, Noxious Revival, that's only, I think that's 1 black. So it's the 3 a blue, 2 life and a black, basically. Yep. And that's not much. That's pretty efficient spell because the Noxious Revival, you'll put the Consult on the top. Oh, that's an extra black, and then you or whatever it might be. Anyway,
yeah.
So like those types of things, those are pretty efficient piles. Now that's still on top of the 3 and a blue that you have to cast for the Gifts Ungiven, but that's still a pretty efficient pile.
And we're getting into the conversation about the fact that Gaia's Cradle is becoming more and more of an important card in the meta that we're in now, especially now that we don't have Dockside, and Rog Thras is definitely doing numbers. We know that. And Gaia's Cradle is now in Rog Thras lists that are preparing for Squirrel Storm and things like that to just put creatures into play. And it's very, very effective and makes these big mana piles less scary. So that's something that we need to monitor for the future in tournaments and talk about, but it's not something that we aren't aware of.
Yes, definitely. All right. So there's one last we're going to kind of pull it all together and I want to give our final thoughts and opinions on how it was overall, how they handled the announcement, the timing, what they're, how they went into each thing, what they talked about each one separately. I want to kind of go over that, what our final thoughts are. So I'll start with you, Jay. What were your kind of overarching thoughts about this entire handling of the situation, this entire set of announcements?
It's very clear, and to those who are now, joining CEDH seriously and for the last couple of years, that we have a diverse, very consistent group of people that care about not just Commander, but the part of Commander that we play, CEDH. We've now been given personal and very poignant call outs to our format, the cards within our format, the players even in our format, those of which now are on the Commander, panel. And we are being talked about in a civil, respectful, non-exclusive way. We have gone leaps and bounds where we were a year ago. We are still, affected by the big three ban. And that's something that, like we said, has its drawbacks, but we talked about our reasonings as to why we're okay with it going forward. And so this article is a perfect consensus of where we are going to be for the next year. And I'm exceedingly thankful to have such a clear, honest, and expansive 2 articles going into the depths to individual cards. And it's given me hope. Honestly, past hope. It's given me assurance that this is in the right hands and that I don't need to be worried about making a very large part of my career doing this full time and, going into Magic the Gathering, specifically this portion of Magic, as something to be invested in, both as a player, as a creator, as a fan, and as a spectator, which I think a lot of us are. We like to watch tournaments, we like to watch gameplay, and this definitely didn't ruin any of those things I just mentioned.
I think that the ship was heading right for the rocks, and they righted the ship.
Yeah,
it was about to capsize, quite frankly. Now, does that mean that it was, the format was dead? Of course not. What it really was saying was that we needed a drastic change. I hate to be critical of anybody who's not with us anymore, or people that were previously on the rules committee. And please understand that my criticism is professional; it's not personal. And I only wish the best for them. I'm not trying to personally attack anybody, but I definitely kind of got the feeling there towards the end, before that last announcement, before their dissolution, was that they were a little bit asleep at the wheel. They weren't really listening to the community. The community was clamoring for a long time for a lot of changes to happen that just weren't happening. And then when a change finally did happen, the last one, it just felt so completely out of touch and tone deaf that it was like, you guys aren't listening. At least that's definitely how it came off.
Yeah.
And this new announcement showed me, there was a lot of words, but basically the words that I extrapolated out of all 8,000 plus words that they said was, we're listening. That's what I heard more than anything else as I was reading through. As they went into what made it onto the Game Changers list. We were listening to your feedback. Let's go over all the details of exactly why a card was unbanned and why certain things stayed banned. Let's talk about the Game Changers list and what we're adding. Let's talk about cards that didn't even make the Game Changers list, but were being discussed. We're going to even put those in this article. What we're getting is that we are going to listen, and that we are listening. And I cannot tell you how happy that makes me to have that kind of leadership in charge of this format. It is absolutely wonderful. I'm over the moon. I think they knocked everything out of the park here. Even if it was with, cards that I may or may not have cared about, I still think they did a fantastic job.
Yeah. It's needless to say, us here at Playing with Power are very happy with this. We love this format, and this is only proof that our format's in good hands. We should be very happy about this.
Yep. And one last thing that I also wanted to say that kind of extrapolated out of this was that, like I said, they were listening to the community over and over again. And this is just kind of a little aside. This is just one little quirk I picked up as I was reading through both of these articles. A trend that kind of kept surfacing as I read through the announcements was high cost spells. Okay. Coalition Victory costs 8 mana. Sway of the Stars costs 10. Mirror costs 5, Panoptic Mirror, and then usually 5 to, imprint a extra turn spell. Craterhoof was discussed as being part of the Game Changers list, even though it wasn't added. That's an 8 mana spell. Tooth and Nail was also discussed. That's a 9 mana Entwine spell. People keep discussing these big cards because those are what you had mentioned earlier to be called categorically I win spells. I win the game. Coalition Victory specifically says it, but other ones are like Craterhoof Behemoth, I win the game. The Tooth and Nail, I win the game.
Yep.
I kind of want to put my own little personal opinion on this particular thing, because this seems to be something that kind of is always in the discussions of the community. Commander is really the place where these spells shine. I'm not sure why people are upset that these spells exist in their games, because this is Commander, where games actually can go long enough to have spells this big actually resolve.
Yep.
Like, you don't see a lot of tooth and nails in Legacy, in Vintage. You don't see a lot of coalition victories resolving. You don't see Sway of the Stars and stuff like that. So these are casual cards that belong in a casual format, and we should be happy that they actually have a place to live and thrive and be cast. And people, you cheer, oh my God, I can't believe you cast a spell. It's so cool. Let's be happy that these spells exist, and actually we have a place where they can be embraced and celebrated. I love these big spells. Let's not be afraid of them,
Yeah. Kind of a closing thought, and something that I call back to often. It was the spring of 2022, and it was 23 or 2022. I'll have to look back, but I picked up Sheldon from his hotel for SCG Con Charlotte, and my wife and I and Josh, who was leading the SCG floor planning, all went to dinner. And during the discussion, I was like, hey, do you want to have the CDH talk? I was wondering. And I had just started this cool new contract. This guy named Ryan at Playing with Powers paying me US dollars to play Commander. What do you think about that? And he pondered, and he looked at me, and he was like, I think it's cool you guys have made a community that's self-sustaining. I'm happy you have something you enjoy. It's not my thing.
Yep.
And that was as much as I expected out of that conversation. And later that night, we went to dinner with the professor as well. I had just started working for him at the time. And the discussion there was, why isn't CDH the end goal of Commander? And that's what Sheldon got. He knew that wasn't the truth. It's not that CDH is where all this ends. Everyone doesn't want that, nor is, honestly, that where every part of this game shines. Coalition victory will never shine in CEDH. I'm sorry. Shines in other places. It deserves a spot, just like Thoracle deserves a spot. And so it's nice to see a panel that definitely has those two voices.
I agree. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to our rambling and our mad thoughts being put out onto digital paper and whatnot. And just wanted to say thank you again for listening to the podcast. We are so glad to bring this back to everybody. Big thanks again to Jay for helping us make this podcast a reality. So where can they find you, Jay, if they ever want to find you, other than Playing with Power, of course? What are you up to lately?
You can find me as DefCat on any social media. I post a myriad of things, such as music and sketches and comedy. You will find me on a lot of other channels, but just Google the name DefCat, find something that's your flavor, and I'm sure you'll be satisfied. And if you made it this far in the podcast and you are still listening, I would love to hear down below your favorite Commander card and why it should go with your favorite condiment. Whether it's ketchup or mustard or mayo, I need to know why your card should be dipped in sauce.
And I want you to tell me in the comments below your favorite card in Commander that costs 7 mana or more.
Ooh.
Let's give the big spells a place to shine.
I want to hear an epic spell. I want to hear a Kamigawa epic.
Actually, those cards are good. I don't want to talk about it. We've talked long enough. Yeah, I love those cards. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching. You can find all of our information in the show notes below. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not before. Follow us on anywhere that you're listening to this podcast. Also support our sponsors that are also listed below. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.